Hello. Okay, so I am back at it again. This time I will be doing book reviews, so we'll see how this goes. But this is How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps by the wonderful New York Times bestseller. Is everyone a New York Times bestseller? I feel like that's not a hard thing to do. Not because it's Ben Shapiro. That's not an insult. But every book I read, I feel like it says, #1, New York Times bestseller. Is that an accomplishment? Anyway, it's Ben Shapiro. He is the right-wing political commentator, so that's nice. He is, I think he was the editor-in-chief, but is no longer the editor-in-chief because he's got things to do. He's like, a dad to like 3 kids. He's a writer, podcast person. He's busy. So he leads the Daily Wire, though. I believe he's just kind of like the boss man. And wow, clearly I did my research. I listen to him all the time. I don't know why. I don't know all the particulars to him. I think he has some really good opinions. I think he has some not so good opinions. And so let's just talk about the book, okay? Okay. So essentially this is about, I have some notes here, so I'm going to be looking at this. Yes, okay. This is about the left and the right, and he's kind of renamed it. The left has become the disintegrationist, and then the right is like the originalist, or really just patriotic Americans. And so the disintegrationists are kind of revamping or remaking American history, philosophy, and culture. The organization of the book goes from the American philosophy, then the disintegrationist philosophy. It goes American culture, then the disintegrationist culture, American history, and then the disintegrationist American history. And then he has a conclusion. My first critique, just off the bat, it says How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps. So I was expecting to see 3 easy steps. I just hit my mic. That's not good. I was expecting to see 3 easy steps on how to destroy America, and that was not the case. There are no steps here. I don't know if I missed them. I take very vigorous notes, okay? Like throughout the whole thing, I highlight vocabulary words that I like, that I need to look up or understand better, learn how to use in sentences, and then I underline also good points or statistics that I find very interesting, and then I circle people or groups that I'm not aware of. Like, I did not know an investor, Paul Zinger. Right. Didn't know who that was, so I circled it. There were no steps. So really that was just a marketing tool to use, and just to grab people's attention. How to destroy America in 3 easy steps. Ben Shapiro has this presence on YouTube, and he thinks it's funny. It's kind of mimetic now. It's memey, and it's funny, and it's like, you have like a lot of, people, kind of trollish people who put up videos of like fire coming out of his eyes when he like destroys people in debates, and it's funny. Sometimes it's annoying, but a lot of it's really funny. And so maybe that's what he was playing off of, and he's just kind of taken on that like destruction view. But at the same time, we knew he wasn't actually telling people how to destroy America, because he loves America. And he is against people who are trying to destroy what the Founding Fathers wanted to build. But I was hoping that there'd be steps that the disintegrationists were trying to do, and I don't really see it. I don't know if it's that they're trying to use philosophy, culture, and history to destroy America. Is that what it is? Either way, I didn't feel like it was crystal clear. I'm going to be doing a book review eventually on White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and it'll be interesting, but at least, she wrote, this is White Fragility, this is the book, it's called White Fragility, and that is what the book is about. Completely, it's about this theory that she has, and at least that's consistent. This, to me, just seemed a little bit like, it just seemed like a marketing tool. I feel that conservatives do that pretty often. They seem to much more so grab onto the fearful American to get people to buy their product more so than the left does, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. My second critique of this book it's only 200 pages long. I had just finished reading The Quest for Cosmic Justice by Thomas Sowell, and he's an economist. I do not believe that I have the intelligence and the depth to be able to do a book review on The Quest for Cosmic Justice. I would have to read it again. And reading that book took me a while because, one, I hadn't read books in years, and so this is my year to get back into book reading. I used to be a really good reader. I kind of fell out of it due to social media and just not really caring about anything anymore, and so I wanted to get back into it, and so I read Quest for Cosmic Justice and was obsessed, and then I immediately jumped into this book. Quest for Cosmic Justice is filled with analysis and statistics and detail, and it's just a heavy, in-depth book, even though it's a pretty small book. This is a similar length, but it is not filled with the same amount or deep information. And so I felt like this was a little too broad. And a common critique of Ben Shapiro by conservatives, not strong Trump supporters, they have different critiques of Ben Shapiro, but a lot of conservatives that I know who are interested in law and politics, is that their critique of him is that he doesn't expand on things enough. He seems to just try and cover little stuff, a lot of little things in an hour, right? That's what his podcast is the Daily Wire. It's the daily news. I wish, because he's a lawyer, he's a trained lawyer, he understands law and the legality of things, that he would take that skill and use it to educate his listeners. So if he could take one case a day, and he's never going to hear me say this, but if he would take one case a day and then expand on that case for his hour and talk about the law behind it, talk about the history behind, what's going on in this case, all of these different things for 1 hour, I think that his listeners would learn a lot more, and it could be very educational, and the listeners could take it away and go and teach that to other people. I just think it would be a very useful... There's a plane. I'm just gonna wait it out. So when I opened this book, I figured, okay, this is an opportunity for him to not be so broad the way he is in his podcast. And instead, let's get a little bit more in depth, because I knew he was a Sowell fan. I figured it would be on the same level. That obviously wasn't fair of me to say. Sowell is much older than him, has a lot more experience. He has, his PhD in economics. And so analysis is Thomas Sowell's thing, right? And, again, not a fair comparison, but it was just a little disappointing for me to come into this book seeing that it was very similar to his podcast in quite a few ways. He would make a point, and I wanted him to spend 10, 15 pages on that point, giving me examples as to why he believes that and why he is correct. And instead it would be 2.5 pages. Here's an example of that. He talks about the Hollywood praised historian Howard Zinn for A People's History of the United States, which is essentially just this 700-page book about how the white man is, in fact, the bane of all of the world in every which way possible. Okay, that's what that book is about, and how the white man is the cause for everyone and everything's problems. That's all you need to know. He spends probably 10 to 12 pages total talking about the book and how people praise it and what his thoughts are on it. But he only briefly mentions the anthropological issues in one of Zinn's claims, specifically from Steven Pinker, who tries to debunk Zinn, and that's kind of it. Then Shapiro moves on to try and dismantle something from the 1619 Project, and I was so frustrated. I was like, wait, no, here's an anthropological issue here. You've given me support as to why he was wrong in this book. Give me another example. Give me some more evidence as to why he was just so inaccurate, and there was a lot of missed opportunities there. I wish that he had spent a lot more time giving me that specific evidence. And instead it seemed to be a lot more small points with a couple of pages, and then he'd just move on. This is also seen in part 3 of American Culture, which is where he talks about how American culture requires risk-taking and a spirit of adventure. However, this part of the chapter is only 2.5 pages before he goes on to conclude the chapter. He has a great quote in there from the free market economist Hayek. He also has a good example in there about the Denmark prime minister kind of rebutting a claim that Bernie Sanders had about Denmark the country, and that was good too, but he needed to expand a lot more on how American culture has this inherent spirit of risk-taking and adventure. I've never really thought about that. I understand that entrepreneurship is something very popular in America. I wish he had talked a lot more about that. That could have been a lot more convincing for me, but from what he gave me, I was not convinced. Now that's a little bit more focused on what I didn't like. I do want to talk about some of the stuff that I think he did an awesome job in. He dedicated nearly 50 pages to the American history, which was really just expanding upon the American philosophy chapter, which is at the very beginning of the book. And he talks about really important elements of the Founding Fathers and John Locke and the idea that individualism was actually foreign at the time of America's birth. That's something I didn't know. I was convinced that individualism was something that had been around since, I don't know, the biblical times, and it was actually, in fact, a more new idea that was associated with the Founding Fathers and people like Locke. It was cool to be able to learn something like that from this book, and he did talk about that quite extensively, and I think that it's definitely important for people to know today. He did a great job helping people to know that slavery was not the cultural, social norm of the time. It was actually always creating divisiveness between people. The Founding Fathers, nearly all of them, were uncomfortable with it and were always explaining to one another and through their letters that yes, this is going to be damning for us. There's going to be a problem. Let's hope to God it goes away soon, because this is wrong. What are we going to do about it, right? And they were very conflicted over how to approach it. So there's this idea today being pushed by the disintegrationists, which is the left that he talks about as the opposing side. They push this idea that slavery was just the thing back then, and it was, as popular as mom jeans are today, or high-waisted pants are today, and that wasn't the case. It was actually a conflicting idea in culture, and he talks about, of course, it was horrible, but it wasn't something that was socially and culturally accepted ever. It was always creating divisiveness, and this is something that we don't really hear today, and he gives quite a few examples proving this idea. I'd also like to offer up some more praise. The font is pretty big in this. Again, it's like 200 pages. Sorry, I have something like, I'm going to read something from this book. It's going to be story time with Mal. And he has almost 500 notes, citations in this book. And I think that that is awesome. That takes a lot of work, and that proves author integrity. And it proves that he wants to find truth and he wants to be honest with his reader. And I checked some of his citations, and so I really appreciate that. You don't really see that nowadays. You see a lot of people will just make these wild accusations and claims and just move on like they don't need to prove anything, and he does not do that. I also really appreciated that in A Quest for Cosmic Justice, the book I had previously read. So this is something I'm going to be looking for in the books that I read. So really, really appreciate this. Where he does his best work. That was so unfortunate. My mic is still in. Okay, so my camera died. Super unfortunate. So now all the angling and stuff is wrong, whatever. So you finish reading the book and you're kind of like, okay, we all hate each other. We're extremely divided. Now what? And this is where I believe he has not only his best style of writing, but his best point as well. And it's strictly opinion, and this is where I think Shapiro shines. He talks about the great choice and how we're raising up our kids, we're raising up this next generation, and how difficult it is to let your child go out into the world to make their own decisions. But how this choice becomes easier when you know that you've raised them up to be the best that they can be. And we can be unified as Americans if we are all raising them up to be patriotic, strong, independent, individualistic Americans. And this is something that we can all share in and something that we can all relate in if we desire to do so. He then finishes it off with a brief anecdote from Harry Stewart. He was a Red Tail fighter pilot for World War II and was part of a segregated group at the time because blacks and whites could not fight together during World War II, which is disgusting. So he was a black fighter pilot. I would like to read just a portion of Shapiro's book, and this is just at the very end. Story time with Mal. Wow, this is all mirrored. So I hate myself. Okay. Stewart says that while his fellow Americans may not have appreciated black Americans, all color disappeared in the sky. When the Red Tails pulled up alongside the B-17 and B-24 bombers, Stewart says white bomber pilots breathed a sigh of relief. We were like their guardian angels, he explains. Stewart helped make hell into heaven. In doing so, he stood with George Washington, Frederick Douglass, and Martin Luther King Jr. He stood with Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan. He stood with the American people. On the day of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, John Hancock, the President of Congress, supposedly stated, "There must be no pulling different ways. We must all hang together." Benjamin Franklin replied, "Yes, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately." In 244 years, nothing has changed. Yes, we are all flawed. Yes, we are cruel and generous and brutal and gentle and cynical and idealistic. But most of all, we must not be enemies. We must be Americans, Americans together, and we will be so again when we are touched by the better angels of our nature. That's some good work, Ben. Shapiro could have made more room. Look at me leaning in. Those glasses are reflecting a lot. Shapiro could have made more room for a lot more detail, I believe. I also understand, however, that he has deadlines and he's a busy man with a busy family. So, obviously there needs to be some understanding there. And it's not my book. He did a great job in establishing author integrity, which is something I will always respect thoroughly. So I really, really appreciate that about him through all of the citations that he made. He explained American history and a lot of the ways that disintegrationists are ruining people's lives and the political system. He gave a ton of examples in regards to the disintegrationist culture, and so that was really good too, and gave me a lot to think about. Above all else, he concluded on a beautiful point and a great story that was really awesome, but I definitely wish he had spent more time on that point, because we need hope and we need to believe that we're capable of not being enemies and that the situation is not as dire as we all think it is, because there's that plane again. It's so unfortunate. We need a little bit more hope, because man, the situation feels pretty hopeless right now. So that's it for my review on How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps. I definitely believe that this is your first step into trying to understand what's going on in America. This is a good book to read. He gives great examples of what's going on right now, great examples on what disintegration is, what the left is doing to the political system, the things that they're doing to ruin people's lives. If you want to understand the Founding Fathers, you need to go ahead and read this book, because he helps you understand their perspectives and their desires and how you could ever disagree with them. I could never understand, and he helps you kind of encourage that perspective. So definitely give it a read. That is it for today. I will be wearing these glasses every time I do a book review. It will be my book review classic. So yes, I might be doing one on the Communist Manifesto, even though that's essentially just a political pamphlet. But I will also probably be doing one on white fragility here pretty soon. So we'll see how that one goes. And yeah, like, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the book if you read it, and I'll see you soon.